Thanks for viewing and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time, subscribe so you don't miss the latest uploads. Now let's get started.
The guardian spirit says they're not fighting a losing battle and tells them to not forget that there are spirits like him to protect brave heroes like them. He stands and says his time is up, telling them to not tell anyone of what happened today, especially the priest, before vanishing. The girl comes back to herself and confusedly asks why she's holding this in her hand and why everyone is looking at her like that. As someone tries explaining it, a man tells him to not so carelessly call him the guardian spirit, and they confusedly think about who it was before deciding that they can win if the guardian spirit is protecting them and valiantly cheering for victory. A boy thankfully remarks that they were able to hold off the monsters for now thanks to the player's priest. The woman casually says he's bought some time, but that won't help him, so it would have been better for him to just have ran away. But another boy says they won't leave until they've killed her. Seeing his masked face, she asks if he's the boy who had his life taken by a terrible curse and tells him to watch carefully because many will die owing to him harboring false hope. The woman says someone else has been watching her as well and calls out to them, asking if they thought she wouldn't notice if they didn't say anything. The masked boy asks what she's doing, to which the guy answers that she's talking to his guardian spirit, as she tells him that that thing is nothing more than a vengeful spirit. The spirit of a woman who died horribly while steeped in malice, Biwaisekanya, a being that truly suits creatures like him. The boy remarks he's never heard the name and says he isn't interested in legends because his only purpose here is to eliminate her. As the monsters start coming again, he tells Rogue to be ready since he's going hard on her and says she knows what to do if he dies. As the two start fighting, the woman says she's realized what he means and asks if his guardian promised to send him back to Earth, but he answers that it's none of her concern and keeps thrusting his spear. The masked boy shouts out to the boy, Sido, in alarm, but he tells him to not interfere. The woman stops and says it's impressive that his guardian used him as a pawn with false promises. Sido asks what she means as Rogue tells Sido to not listen since she's just trying to get to him, to which a man asks if she's afraid her lies are going to be exposed. Sido asks Rouge what she means, so she hurriedly tells him that she'll explain everything later and to just focus on the battle for now. The woman confirms if the reason he was facing her so confidently was because he could return to Earth, to which he says she knows him well and answers that he's gathered all the points needed to return but will still eliminate her. As the man with Rouge laughs and asks what his guardian can even do when Earth doesn't even exist anymore. Sido asks what she's talking about and angrily repeats what she said, asking if the Earth doesn't exist, and if this is for real. The man remarks that he's startled and that he just told the truth, to which Rogue tells him to hold on and just focus on the battle for now. The woman angrily says she knows better than anyone that the Earth doesn't exist and reminds her of the saying they had when they were heroes. Thought an advanced civilization is eyeing the Earth, so they pick heroes and train them in this world, to which the man says they're the civilization, the ones that erased the Earth and turned them into long-termers. The woman answers that he seems to be duped as well, since he too will be discarded when he's outlived his usefulness. The masked boy shakily tells Sido not to believe her, so she tells him that it's been hundreds of years. They selected the ones who would become long-termers in the process, manipulated their memories and isolated them in the system, summoning them when necessary. That's the truth. Rogue apologizes and said she wanted to tell him, but the woman answers that justifying herself is pathetic, and that's why she deceived the saints in the end. Rogue tries to hurriedly convince Sido, but he answers that that's enough and surprisingly remarks that he had 1,000 doubts from the start. When he first reached 100,000 points, his guardian deity didn't just take him away, and later realized after meeting a player that his guardian deity just gifted him a prize at 100,000 points, so they wouldn't send the hero back to Earth. They'd keep them by their side forever, which is when he started doubting that it maybe meant there was no place to return to. As a monster punches Pierre away, Yunha asks if he's alright, so he answers that he's fine as one of the guardian spirits worryingly says they've been too incapacitated at this point. Another one asks the elder if they should retreat since the raid has failed now, but the elder says they can't withdraw at this point, while the woman tells Sido that anyone can tell he's no ordinary man, but going up against her is foolish. He can't do anything since the humans in the underworld are on the brink of extinction, to which Sido says she's truly ignorant, even when she calls herself a deity and opens his status window, saying he can't go back to Earth, but there is something they can do. He asks Rogue if she's sorry for what she did to him and says they can talk about it later. Then when she answers that she is, he remarks that they can't waste the lives of the people who came to help them and uses revival of the dead and revives the hero after the woman says someone's life won't make a change. Rogue asks what he's doing as he remarks that it's quite frightening to summon someone like that and that it's the only way he has to turn the tables even though it's uncomfortable, the mightiest hero he knows. As a man appears and asks where he is, he recognizes Sido as the healer as Nurui gets resurrected. Nurui asks what's going on and why he's here, so Sido asks him to calm down first of all and gives him a hammer, telling him to take this for now and will explain later before kicking him into the abyss. He tells him to take care of those guys, so he'll explain everything later. He asks Lido if he can use divine magic as well and requests it to go down there and help that guy as well, which it agrees to and jumps down. As Nurui's sliding down the wall, he questions why that healer guy saved him and angrily says he has no idea what's what while facing the monsters. Meanwhile, someone tells the captain that something fell from above, to which he says he felt it too, and tells them to be careful since it could be a new enemy, while Nurui remarks that his head is surprisingly clear and wonders if it's because he died and came back to life. He sees Lime on his shoulder and asks what these monsters are after confirming that he was sent by Sido. One of the people asks him to identify himself, so he tells them that his name is Nurui before they see multiple monsters approaching, and the captain tells them all to head to the rear since this place is dangerous. But Nurui says all they have to do is take these monsters out and throws his hammer, taking 3 of them out with a single strike, seeing which the captain wonders who in the world he is to be so impressive. Nurui says they don't need to worry about his safety and asks where the way up is. The captain answers that he's sealed the way for now, so Nurui says that means they need to kill the monsters to make their way upwards and rushes away, taking them down one after another. Yuna asks Pierre, the captain, if that guy could be a messenger of the saint and points towards the slime on his shoulders. Pierre answers that that superhuman power is quite convincing as Nurui tells the healer to wait since he'll be next. Meanwhile, Sido tells the woman that it's all part of the strategy since he plans to break down everything she has. He opens status window and invests 1 rank in the Dice of God, remarking that he didn't invest points till now because he thought they would be wasted, but there's no need to save them now. Looking at the status window, he says the dice count has been increased by 1, so the restriction of doubles not applying in the case of a critical failure seems to have lifted, but they seem minimal compared to the points he spent. Suddenly he receives a ring, as the guardian spirit says it's the artifact bestowed by Goddess Rouge, since they have to end this quickly as Rouge tells him to hurry up and finish this. They can talk later. Sido remarks that he has no idea what this does, but the rings puts itself on his finger, to which the woman tells him to continue with these meaningless actions and asks if he doesn't understand that he can't do anything, hearing which he asks if that's the case. The results of the dice are determined solely by luck and cannot be controlled, but the dice in this world are different. Depending on the surrounding environment and individual attributes, the results are limited to what's logically possible. The dice here were closer to fate than luck. The woman says he seems to have faith in it and asks if it changes anything for her, whatever it is, to which Sido says they won't know until they fight, before noticing that mana is flowing out of the ring and can use skills that consume a lot of mana without holding back with this, and remarks that this item is perfect for him. Rogue says she's glad and asks if it will be of any use to him, so he answers that this fight is going to be a bit easier. He starts shooting projectiles at the woman, who puts up a barrier and says attacks like this won't work on her. no matter how many they may be, to which Sido inwardly admits that's true since it would normally be useless, but he can change the dice results with the dice god skill, even without rolling again. When the double option activates, the results accumulate, allowing him to achieve impossible outcomes, so he'll keep rolling the dice to increase the number of attacks until he gets a double. As an attack grazes her, she wonders how it affected her and attacks him, but Sido says there's no need to dodge since he's trying to aim for a critical failure for a double. He succeeds and the trajectory of the arrow completely changes, seeing which she jumps away. Sido remarks that she can't attack him despite being a god and says he'll give her one more chance and tells her to attack since he won't move at all. The woman angrily asks if he's mocking her and swings her scythe, after which he answers that it's his turn and stabs her with his spear, after which she transforms into her real form, which is of a man. She asks if he thinks he can beat her like that, as Rouge says she's never heard of the dice skill before, to which Sido answers that he needs to keep a trick or two up his sleeve. Seeing this, Rogue says she was wondering how he would go up against a god, and that choosing to take action was indeed the right decision, while the man asks what this skill is that is making impossible events happen in shock. Sido asks if they thought only they could use skills and tells them to not underestimate humans so much, as the woman remarks that having some grandiose skills is useless in the end. She swings her hand out for her scythe, but it doesn't return, seeing which she asks why it isn't coming in shock, but sees that the masked boy, Meltes, has it. Sido warns him that it's dangerous, but he answers that it's okay, asking the woman if she's forgotten that he was his saint too, and could use the scythe from the moment he laid his hands on it. Taking off his mask, Metles is revealed to be his mask and says her heart has started beating again. Metles remarks that her body is back in surprise, to which Sido asks if her body hurts, but she says it feels like a warm energy is enveloping her whole body, unlike when she used holy magic, and she just tried to disarm her, but didn't expect it to turn out like this. Sido says it worked out, and thanks to that, they even got the weapon which will make the fight easier. The woman says she overcame a curse thanks to a relic, and her guardian spirit says it would have kept her for much longer if he had known this was possible. Metles says her body has been used for a whole year at a time, unlike other curses, to which the woman says she won't sacrifice any other vessels if she becomes hers. Sido angrily starts saying something, but Metles says it's okay since she won't be swayed by such words anymore. She asks if what she wants is her looks, and if she's ever cared about someone's thoughts or intentions. She summons the scythe, saying no one should have to go through this again, which is why she'll do everything in her power to stop her. The woman remarks that's fine and tells Metles to face her, declaring that she'll regret that decision, but Metles says there won't be any attacks as the two unleash their attacks. As they start battling, Sido tells her to watch out, but she says it's okay and tells him to leave it to her so she'll clear the way. Sido rushes in and says now's the time, thanking her for the help. He thrusts his spear, but she dodges, so Metles runs in, seeing an opening since the posture's disrupted before Sido stabs, the woman inwardly saying it doesn't penetrate deeply because of the shield, which is why what they should target is. He tells Metles to attack the legs, pushing her to the ground to induce a coherence penalty. The woman asks how they dared do that and gets ready to unleash an attack, but Sido says it's useless as Meltes stops it. He says now's the time and tells her to freeze them. She answers that he too will, but he tells her to go ahead and do it since it doesn't matter, so she freezes her and Sido's legs before saying that the entire place is shaking. He answers that Tartaros is about to collapse since this creature can no longer offset coherence. The woman turns into her original form and angrily asks how they dared to do this, to which Sido says it finally revealed its true form and asks how it feels to be beaten by two insignificant beings. It asks if he thinks this is the end and says they can't kill him, and that they can recreate a game board like the priesthood. It asks what they think he is, if he sets his mind to it, but Sido interrupts him, and says he can roughly ask who he is since a god with the symbol of a sickle is either Cronus or Thanatos, so he must be one of them, remarking that he must be Cronus before it says they need to wait for this body to collapse by dragging out the time, but he won't fall for it. Sido says he seems to be under some delusion, whether he dies or not, he's already lost to him, so he better do it quickly if he wants to run away. Cronus furiously calls him an insect, so he answers that he was the one that got done in by an insect, and tells him to keep fighting if he's so frustrated. Cronus says he'll never forget the disgrace and tells him to just watch before turning back to his female form and collapsing, seeing which Sido says he was the one who ultimately fled. Metles asks if he really had to kill her, so he answers that they wouldn't know when she might be manipulated again if they didn't, which makes it dangerous, so there wasn't any other choice. Metles agrees that's true, but still regrettable since the person who collapsed under the sway of the gods is just too pitiful. The floor suddenly starts violently trembling, seeing which Sido rushes to Metles' side and tells her to freeze both their legs to the floor since it'll disperse the impact. He says the floor here is adamantium, so it won't break from just them hitting it. He tells her to use that to their advantage and hold on tight as they fall underground. Hearing this, she thanks him by embracing him, seeing which Rogue tells him to pat her quickly, so he shyly thanks her for her hard work. As Tartaros starts collapsing, Pierre tells everyone to gather the injured, remarking that the collapse is definitely related to the upper levels and asking the saint if he's unharmed. As a large rock starts falling on their heads, he tells them all to take cover as the dust clears and they see Sido and Metles standing there. The people happily start to celebrate before noticing Metles' beauty and wondering if she's a saintess before Pierre steps forward and says he's glad they're unharmed. Sido says it's all because of them enduring everything as well, but Pierre gets on his knee and says it's all because of the presence of the saint and thanks him for saving the sacrament from the fake saint and apologizes for the rudeness he committed. But Sido says it's all right and tells him to please get up, asking if he can trust him now, which Pierre agrees to before Rouge tells Sido to pay attention to the shining floor in the bottom right corner. Sido asks what it is in surprise, so she answers that it's the core of Tartaros, the relic. If one stands on it, it'll be like a saint's room, sealed from the outside, and wants to finish the conversation they couldn't have earlier. Sido agrees since there are still matters to be resolved, but wonders if they can talk without being overheard, if it's sealed off from the outside, and if it could be useful. He tells Metles that he's going to organize his sanctuary now and communicate, and asks her to let people know that he's gaining Oracle currently. She asks if there's a reason for that, so he answers that he wants to lead the Order of the Sacrament and starts conversing with Rogue, seeing which Nurui questions if he really became a saint and remarks that they'll find out soon enough. Nurui looks at Lime and tells it to not worry since he's not here to fight and is strongly kind inside, even with the person who killed him right in front of him. Moreover, he wonders if he hears the voice that always echoed in his head, and if this is an effect of dying and coming back to life. Yunha approaches him and asks if he's one of the saint's companions and introduces herself as Senior Priest Seong Yunha and would like to express her gratitude on behalf of the whole priesthood. Nurui gets up and says thanks are unnecessary since she's not particularly a comrade of his or that guy's. He asks if she can show him the way out, more importantly, which she agrees to, and shows to him before asking if he's leaving already, and if she should heal him a bit before he goes, but he replies that it's unnecessary and thanks her for her concern. She asks for his name, so he says it's Nurui, and asks if she'll convey to the saint that he's waiting once things have settled down, which she agrees to, so he thanks her and says he's counting on her before addressing Lime, and asking if it isn't going to return to the healer, and remarks that he wasn't bored thanks to him. Yuna approaches Meltes and asks what's going on, so she asks if she knows where the saint is. She answers that he's currently receiving a divine oracle, which surprises everyone as Pierre asks if the divine oracle wasn't something the saintess initially received, but she answers that she can no longer receive the oracle now, perhaps because her status as a saintess was once taken away. Fortunately, the voice of the divine reached the saints, so from now on the sacrament will move under the guidance of the saint's divine oracle hearing, which the guardians question over whether or not the saint's player can provide information to the hero, and if the sacrament isn't sustained by faith in the divine oracle anyway, so without it, the sacrament would cease to exist. Hearing this, the members wonder whether that means the saint will become the new leader of the sacrament. Yunha asks Meltes if she's sure the saint can receive the divine oracle. So she answers that she can guarantee that part and asks if she can please trust her as a saintess and follow the saint as one of the guardians. Says the saint defeated the great king and gave the sacrament a chance to move in the right direction, so it would be worth giving it a try. Hearing this, another guardian says he's fine with it if the elder thinks so, since it's better than starting over from scratch, which the others agree to as well. Meanwhile, Sido says no wonder things felt strange since there's no Earth and has never seen anyone who claimed to have traveled between this world and Earth. Many heroes must have filled their points to return, but it's strange that heroes don't doubt that aspect, so have they been prevented from doubting it, which Rogue agrees to and says it has been made so that people could not doubt it and don't even realize that the world has become a game or that gods use them as NPCs. He asks if everything's a device for their game at the end, and if they made all the spirits and dragons from this world disappear, both of which she agrees to. He asks what she means by being a spirit in that case, so she says she was raised as an assassin, and is an entity that contains memories of countless girls who were abandoned after their missions and should have faded away with time, but an original record became a myth and created her. She says she created the bond with him without any personal gain because along the line she met him, an irregular who deviated from the game board. Sido asks what her plan is at the end, so she says she plans to use his irregularity to shatter the game board. Sido repeats what she said, which she agrees to, and says she's going to break the system or release the heroes trapped in the game. He asks what she means by that, to which she starts explaining that Earth hasn't completely disappeared. First of all, when they conquer a world and gather civilized beings, the world becomes a game board. Earth is the same way. In a few thousand years, the seeds will sprout, and it will become a new game board with a different cosmology, making it look completely different from the Earth he once knew. Sido says it's still the same, but there's no place to go back and asks if the civilized beings collected at that time will become heroes. She agrees to this as well and explains that civilized beings are isolated for the purpose of summoning them whenever necessary, and these ones have been isolated for hundreds of years. Sido remarks that they're more ruthless than what he'd expected and asks why they bothered to go with civilized beings. She remarks that players like unpredictability, and since only living beings can create myths, they use them. Sido remarks that he keeps getting more and more questions as he keeps hearing her and asks what he has to do. She explains that it's similar to what gods have been doing in a way. Even if players are called gods, they aren't perfect, which is proved by the fact that he's already defeated 2 of them in his first attempt. That's how they punish players who cross the line. He asks if that will work, so she tells him that he showed them the way it should be done today. Their enemies are like Tartaros. It seems like an unbreakable piece, but with just one small piece inserted, it can collapse, so her plan is similar to that, and he's the first piece. On top of that, he's already taken down a massive piece called the Sacrament. Starting from the village of Ironhill, she gained control over a massive organization called the Sacrament. It's a group that can influence the world, so she should decide how to use it. For now, he can continue like he currently is. The pieces will naturally come together. She says they'll break the boundaries of the board by pushing the inevitability to its absolute max, and knows people who can help them, so he doesn't need to worry about it alone, which is why he should join her in this. Meanwhile, some people walk through a corridor as Chris stops and asks if this is the sacred sanctuary of the priests, seeing which his companions remark that he seems to be having a great time and is different from the one they normally know. Pierre arrives to greet them and asks if they're the ones. Once the guards confirm this, he introduces himself to them before Chris tells his companions that Sido is the saint, and they'll understand when they see his aura. He asks Pierre where he is, to which he deduces that he's Chris, and says he's heard he aspires to become a priest or a holy knight, and can arrange for him to participate in the sacrament's regular training, which he excitedly agrees to. One of the companions still seems to be a bit skeptical, so her sister says she aspires to become a holy knight as well. But she replies that it's better to stay away from the sacrament since they have to go through 5 years of mandatory education and start accumulating points. But you can't use them as you please, so it'll take about 10 years to return to Earth. Pierre takes them to the saint, and she spots an elf on the way, telling her sister, Ian, about how strange it is since elves have their own religion, and all of them have a kind of weird vibe about them. As they enter a hall, the three look around before Chris excitedly points Sido out to the girl, who unbelievably remarks that Sido really is the saint. She remarks that it's really surprising seeing it this way and is honestly hard to believe, but the two really suit each other. As the coronation ceremony for the saint and saintess concludes, the people start cheering before Sido asks Metles if he may leave now that it's roughly ended since he's a bit awkward in these gatherings. She asks if it's unexpected for him to say such a thing, so he remarks that he technically isn't a saint, but it feels a bit awkward when everyone cheers like that. She says he actually did save her and the sacrament though, and asks if that isn't enough for some cheers, to which he says he understands and that someone is waiting, asking for her to follow after him. As he approaches the elf the woman had run into at the hall, he asks how her body is, to which she answers that she's perfectly fine for an elf, and asks if he remembers their promise. He answers that he has something to talk about with her regarding that, and can't give her adamantium since it was too much, and might prove dangerous if it started to revolve around the black market, so the sacrament decided to retrieve it. Her friend asks if he's changing his words now, but he tells them to relax since they genuinely appreciate the elves and will make sure to properly compensate them. They remark that they feel like they're being deceived and ask what he'll give them, so he answers that they'll provide 10,000 gold to each of the elves that fought alongside them, and is better than directly dealing with adamantium. Additionally, they can provide free food and accommodation to all the villages supported by the sacrament. The elves agree to this, so he tells them to spread the word to avoid any confusion, and says they'll receive guidance on where they'll stay soon as he's leaving, after which they decide to enjoy the rest of the party. As he's leaving, Sido inwardly remarks that he did all that was necessary, but it feels like there's something missing. As he approaches, a guard informs him that someone is waiting, suddenly making him remember that the most difficult task remains. He enters the room and apologizes for keeping him waiting so long, hearing which Lime jumps into his hand off of Nurui's shoulder, who tells him to not get it all twisted since he wasn't protecting him, to which Sido cheerfully answers he could tell from Lime's reaction. Sido says he'd thought that he would ask for a fight, hearing which Nurui answers that he had thought that at one point, but is confused and asks why he brought him back. Sido asks if he saw all the monsters and says he couldn't go there to save the people, so he needed a strong warrior to go save them, and Nurui is the strongest warrior he knows. Nurui asks how long it's been since he died, to which Sido says it's been half a year, which surprises him as he questions the fact that he grew so strong in half a year. Sido replies that he became strong enough to beat him in 2 months, after which he gives the hammer back, saying he only used it for saving people because Sido had him do it and wouldn't have fought for others if it was up to him, and is grateful for bringing him back to life before promising to bring Sido back if he dies. He asks if he's the one who killed Arisa. He answers that she'll probably be alive if she's lucky, and tells Nurui to not get revenge on her before the guard says there's something to report, and tells him that a former delegation has arrived, expressing their belief for the newly transformed sacrament of Saint Helena. Sido tells him to escort them inside, remarking that this feels somewhat suspicious. Rogue asks if he remembers what she told him, that there are people who can help and elves might be among them, although they might not help willingly. Hearing this, Sido asks the guard if there are any other reports, so he answers that Chris and Ian have joined the sacrament and are currently undergoing training as apprentice knights, to which Sido remarks that the two seem to be doing well on their own, and tells the guard to send the delegation in. Nurui remarks that he seems busy, but Sido asks what he plans to do now, and he answers that he received an offer for a position in the sacrament. Asking if he ordered that, Sido says he didn't, but he's welcome here, but Nurui says he plans to leave once their conversation is over since it's a position that doesn't suit him, so they'll meet again if the opportunity arises, since he owes him for various things and hopes for a chance to repay someday. hearing which Sido invites him for a drink every now and then, which he remarks doesn't sound bad either. As the elves arrive, a man named Matari introduces himself as the representative of the St. Helena delegation. Sido says it's an honor to meet them, and asks them to comfortably take a seat, after which he offers them tea from the earth, infused with roots and plants, and had heard that they could only come things from the earth due to religious beliefs, which Matari warmly says is an unexpected gesture. Sido agrees that they must respect each other's religions, and that he was surprised by their sudden visit, to which Matari answers that they'd heard there were people of their kind living here and have grouped together with humans. Sido answers that they can't just return them since they're a part of the sacrament now, but Matari tells him that they're not interested in the people who have already left, and have heard that the church has gained substantial amounts of adamantium, to which Sido answers that it's the sacrament's property now, so they won't hand it over. Matari says it came from the Mother Earth, to which he answers that they can't just use the excuse of their Mother Earth, but he says they'll pay 10 times the amount in gold for each unit. However they prefer, and even 20 times if they refuse, but Sido says they won't sell no matter how much they offer, and asks what they intend to do with it. He answers that relics are indestructibly powerful, however adamantium is different, because weapons made from it can hold up even against other relics, hearing which Rogue says it seems like the humans are planning something against the humans and already waged war against the heroes, but were defeated by the relics, which is why they require the adamantium. Matari says they're the ones who've always suffered because of him and the Guardians. Sido says they were also forcibly brought here, and remarks that it seems like talking won't work, and has lost his patience because of someone's short-sightedness. Matari says they should just end the useless argument here, since all they desire is the adamantium, for which they'll promise partial peace and will rebuild the holy war, but the heroes belonging to the sacrament will be spared, only up to their generation. Sido says that's a grateful offer and asks about what will happen after that, to which he answers that they'll naturally kill them all and make them disappear, which angers Sido before Rouge alarms him that the envoys are trying to steal adamantium. He wonders how that's possible when the Holy Knights are guarding it before Matari's assistant suddenly disappears, holding adamantium in his hand, as Matari says they should just leave now since their objectives have been fulfilled.
Will RMC be able to stop the elves from taking the adamantium? Also, how will Rouge and Sido be able to stop the continuation of the Gods game? Find out on the next upload. Also remember to like and subscribe to let us know to make more episodes like this, and comment below other manhwas or mangas you would be interested in. Once again, thanks for watching.